Welcome to session 132 of the Bible in a Year commentary. If you started this series on the 1st of January, then today should be the 12th of May. Today we'll be looking at Obadiah 1 to 21 and Psalm 127. But first of all, let's get an overview of Obadiah. Today's reading is a short one. Obadiah is the shortest of all the books in the Old Testament. Unlike the other prophetic books we've looked at, this one is not a compilation of all of Obadiah's preachers and visions. This book is just one vision focused on the nation of Edom. Of all the foreign nations, Edom has the closest history with Israel. If you think all the way back to Genesis, before Jacob had his 12 sons, who would become the 12 tribes of Israel, Jacob was still living at home, and he was a twin to his brother Esau. Have a look at Genesis 25 to 27. Esau was a hairy, red-headed man. These two had an uneasy relationship, namely because Jacob kept cheating his brother out of his blessing. Just as Jacob's descendants became the nation of Israel, Esau's descendants became the nation of Edom. Because of this, these two nations have always had an uneasy relationship with one another. For example, have a look at Numbers 20, verses 14 to 20. When Babylon came to sack Jerusalem and take its people into exile, the nation of Edom saw this as an opportunity to raid and murder other Israelite cities. Here is a simple summary of the structure. We have Obadiah 1 to 14, the accusations against Edom, and then Obadiah 15 to 21, the day of the Lord against all nations. Like many of the pre-exilic prophets, Edom deals with the destruction and judgment on wickedness and evil, while also sharing of a future hope when all things will be restored under God. So let's jump in with today's reading, Obadiah 1 to 21. Obadiah's vision starts with God's declaration against Edom. He will wage war against her and make her small. The reason? Because of her pride. They both lived in a lofty cliff top and saw themselves as better than the Israelites, with no one being able to defeat them as easily. God then brings up the image of a thief or a plunderer. In both these cases, these people would steal and take what they needed, but would leave the stuff they couldn't carry or weren't interested. But let's jump in with today's reading, Obadiah 1 to 21. Obadiah's vision starts with God's declaration against Edom. He will wage war against her and make her small. The reason? Because of her pride. They both lived in a lofty cliff tops and saw themselves as better than the Israelites, with no one being able to defeat them as easily. God then brings up the image of a thief or a plunderer. In both these cases, these people would steal and take what they needed, but would leave the stuff they couldn't carry or weren't interested in. In contrast, Edom's destruction will be total. There will be nothing left. They will be driven out of their own borders. We're then given more specific reasons for Edom's judgment. When Babylon came, they let it happen and then saw this as an opportunity to join in. They gloated and celebrated in Jerusalem's downfall, in the downfall of their sister nation. Then God gave them a series of do-nots, which are probably things they were already doing. He tells them not to laugh and mock Israel for their destruction. Do not go into the wreckage of the city and loot what the Babylonians left behind. And do not trap those few who survived Babylon's attack so that you can sell them into slavery. We can see from this how wicked Edom had been in how they treated Israel. And then Obadiah pivots. Having focused on Edom, Obadiah now declares the day of the Lord is near upon all the nations. That's Obadiah 15. Having looked at the coming destruction of Edom, Obadiah then sets his eyes on a much more future day that is coming where God will bring judgment on all the wickedness on the earth. Just as the people of Edom drank to celebrate Israel's destruction, so the wicked people of all the nations drink of God's judgment. Just like Edom are trying to consume the last of Israel, one day Israel will be like a fire consuming all the wicked in Esau and in the rest of the nations. Then God ends with how his people, represented by various cities in Israel, will possess these foreign nations. God will restore his people and they will reclaim this land. In other words, after destroying the wicked, God will restore his people and establish a new kingdom that includes all nations of the earth. Obadiah uses Edom as an example, which is made easier by the fact that Edom uses the same letters as Adam in the original Hebrew, which can also be translated as humanity. Just as Edom was proud and corrupt, so the rest of humanity has proven itself proud and corrupt. And while God will punish Edom in the near future, there will come a future time when he will deal with all pride and corruption in humanity. He will then restore his people and his kingdom, and all the nations will be restored to him. But that is the book of Obadiah. But now let's look at Psalm 127. This psalm is dedicated to King Solomon and is named as a psalm of ascent. These psalms were sung by worshippers as they ascended to Jerusalem for the 3 pilgrimage festivals, Passover, Festival of Weeks, and the Festival of Tabernacles, or possibly by the Levites as they ascended the steps of the temple. Psalms 120 all the way through to Psalm 134 are all psalms of ascent. Here's a simple summary of the structure. Verses 1 to 2, the Lord must build the house, and then verses 3 to 5, the children are an inheritance. In this ascent journey, we've gone from being far from God's presence in Psalm 120 to seeking God's presence in Psalm 121, and then to reaching God's presence in Psalm 122. From there, the psalmist has asked the Lord for help, Psalm 123, and then praised the Lord for his protection in Psalm 124. From within Jerusalem, they reflected on the nature of righteousness and wickedness from Psalm 125. And they then thanked God for how he restored his city, but also asked for more in Psalm 126. Now comes a reflection on the importance of God being first and foremost in our lives. The psalmist opens with a simple observation: unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labour in vain. Psalm 127, verse 1. It is pointless working and striving for something unless the Lord is in it. It's useless working hard from a place of anxiety to provide for yourself. The Lord is the one who provides for those he loves. Success comes from the Lord, nowhere else. The psalmist then reflects on children. They too are a gift from the Lord. A warrior without an arrow in his hand cannot use his bow. He is useless. But a warrior with a quiver full of arrows is powerful and effective. In the same way, children are a blessing and a help to their parents. They are a cause of celebration. It's perhaps fitting that this psalm is attributed to Solomon, as it's the first wisdom psalm of the Ascent Psalms. It's a reflection on the fact that all good things come from the Lord. So rather than striving in our own strength, we should seek for where he wants to work. Thanks for joining us today. Take a moment to reflect on what you've read and share your thoughts or questions below. If you're watching in the future, then you can click here for the next session, or you can find the full playlist just down here. To receive these daily commentaries in your email inbox, subscribe via the link in the description below. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.